We'll go through all of today's Tesla stock news. Tesla just surprised us with faster than expected increase in production in Texas. It just reached 5,000 Model Ys per week, which is about 250,000 vehicles per year. Before today, they thought they were pretty much right here, and to get to 4,000 in Texas, it took 108 days. So if you just extrapolate that, yeah, I think many did not expect Tesla to get to 5,000 36 days after it got to 4,000, especially with the inventory being so high. And more good news, the inventory is looking better today. In the US, look at the Model Y falling today by a lot. I expect the prices to go up for the Model Y, or I expect a backlog. But this increase in production is quite impressive because the inventory for the Model Y is coming down so quickly. Remember, Texas only produces the Model Y. It does not produce the Model 3 or any other vehicles, except it will start producing the Cybertruck pretty fast. It is also probably relatively safe to say that this production increase is due to 4680 batteries ramping successfully, which, if true, that would be really good news. This piece of news appears like bad news, but actually I don't think that it's bad news. Tesla China just denied the authenticity of the news that they will begin production of a refreshed Model 3 at Giga Shanghai in June. Note, even source says this, Tesla China has denied some rumors in the past that still ended up being true. We all want Tesla to be a perfect company, but Tesla denied reports that there would be price cuts. This was back in September 30th, and what happened later? Price cuts. Just 3 weeks later, roughly. Tesla China calls media reports of potential production cuts in China false, and what happens? This was, keep in mind, in December. Tesla China did suspend production in Shanghai for a little while, and this had nothing to do with Christmas because they don't celebrate Christmas there. Keep in mind that Tesla China is it's sort of like its own entity, so I'm not saying that you can't trust Tesla. I think to some degree certainly you can, but anything that comes out of Tesla China, I'm very skeptical until it's clear, yeah, this is actually happening. And by the way, it's not really a bad idea for them to actually say that this rumor is false because of the Osborne effect. If they tell everyone, hey, look, yeah, we are actually going to be producing this new refreshed vehicle that is going to look better and maybe have better performance perhaps as well, that would hurt Tesla sales. So this is not wrong to do. I just don't put much weight on that statement. It doesn't really mean anything to me. It's almost meaningless. But regular consumers will not be familiar with Tesla's history, so they may have a different opinion on that. Morgan Stanley has some pretty good thoughts today. Why isn't Tesla talking about the IRA, the $7,500 government tax credits that Tesla benefits from? Many auto analysts believe the Inflation Reduction Act helps lift all EV boats, that any incentive is better than no incentive. Of course, we don't think so, says Morgan Stanley, because while it may lift all boats, if the waves are huge now because there's more water somehow, and if other automakers have small boats, meaning they don't make that many EVs, and Tesla has this huge ship, Tesla is unaffected by these big waves. There's going to be so much money from the government. It's going to be like an ocean of money and not like a river of money anymore. So here's what they say. Tesla can harvest far more IRA benefits than its peers, with benefits being passed through to the consumer, padding market share, not margins. But largely, this is what the government wants. The government wants the people to be able to purchase EVs at a cheaper price than perhaps ideally gasoline vehicles, which will happen eventually, just a matter of time. I'm talking about sticker prices. Pull up Tesla's 1Q transcript and do a text search for IRA or Inflation Reduction Act. No mention at all. Interesting. Didn't come up once, not because the IRA doesn't matter for Tesla. Tesla is likely to be by far the biggest beneficiary of the IRA within the EV landscape. in both absolute and relative terms. Tesla has leveraged its vertically integrated business model, technological innovation, and manufacturing expertise to establish cost leadership and, until recently, industry high margins. And then the US Inflation Reduction Act was written into law, providing abundant tax credits, an ocean of money allocated by kilowatt hour that cement Tesla's leadership and widen the gap to the competition. We believe that the IRA is so advantageous to Tesla in terms of absolute dollars versus legacy OEMs that it functions as an insurance policy that investors are currently overlooking. Here's one way it helps Tesla more. Tesla is so focused on making so few models. The more vehicles Tesla produces, the cheaper you will be able to produce these vehicles. Just to get in, you have to compete with Tesla that is already at a huge scale, while you're just trying to make the first or second generation prototype that is sort of clunky and you don't have the advantage of this huge scale. And you look at, for example, Lucid, which sells vehicles on average at $106,000 and then loses $550,000 per car sold. For Ford to produce one electric vehicle, it costs about $100,000 and they sell it for about $50,000 on average, roughly. That's why I tweeted, Lucid is much better than Ford. Losing money. Rivian is doing a little bit better than Lucid. Their average selling price is $83,000. They lose $180,000 per car sold. After Rivian reported some new information today, the stock went up in the after hours about 6% almost, because it reported a narrower than expected quarterly loss. That loss was pretty huge though. When investors are happy with such huge losses, it doesn't show you that the company is in a great position exactly. And maybe they will make it, and I hope they do, but long term, it's going to be difficult for Rivian, especially then the Cybertruck comes out. Morgan Stanley continues and says Tesla could experience IRA benefits equal to as much as 45% of its earnings in 2023 from just the advanced manufacturing production tax credits, which I don't think include the $7,500 credits. I think they are talking about just the credits that you get for making the batteries within the USA, and these go directly to the manufacturer and not to the consumer. They continue that these credits, for example, for GM, that would only amount for 3%, and for Ford, 6%. For Tesla, that's 45% of its earnings. About $200 million for GM, $344 million for Ford, and Morgan Stanley says, we think the relative advantage to Tesla could catalyze legacy OEMs to rethink their next $50 billion of capital expenditures into loss-making EVs and inspire an era of capital and discipline, meaning slowing down the transition for them, accelerating the bankruptcy, because if you don't transition right now, then Tesla is cutting the costs so much, it will be so almost impossibly difficult for them to ever really catch up to Tesla. Tesla is continuing its battle in Norway. It is about to pass Volkswagen in Norway. It's very close right now. Interestingly, Jerome Powell now has the lowest approval rating of any Fed chair going back to when surveys began in 2001. And I'm really surprised that actually still 36% of Americans still trust Powell to do the right thing when it comes to managing the US economy. I personally have strong faith in the government really messing things up. This way, I don't get caught off guard, and the few times they don't mess up, I am pleasantly surprised and really happy. We got a more accurate, slightly more precise breakdown of the actual numbers from China, and yeah, everything is looking pretty good, just like we expected before. It looks like we are on track, clearly, so far at least, to have a record quarter in China. As a Canadian, I love seeing this. More superchargers in Canada. Good. Tesla Korea announces that they are now doing touchless test drive events where you can drive a Tesla for free up to 1 hour. I like that you can do it for 1 hour. Before, when I would go to Tesla, they said, oh, get the car back here in 15 minutes. And it's within Vancouver City, so I can't even drive a car on a highway. I can only try it in a city. Can't really go fast. So before we got our Tesla, I actually tried our friend's Tesla for a little longer, and we rented a Tesla too, and I'm like, yeah, this is pretty good. Interestingly though, my wife did not even want to try a Tesla when we went for a test drive, but then our friend gave an opportunity to us to try a Tesla, and then my wife did. She was hooked. Another reason to be excited about the increased Texas production for Tesla has to do something with this ship. This ship is from China, and specifically it is the first ship that carries Model 3s and Ys from Giga Shanghai to Canada. These ships typically carry about 4,000 Teslas. That means not only is the inventory going down for a Model Y in the US, the production is increasing, and Tesla is no longer going to send vehicles from the US to Canada, which creates even more pressure on the inventory to stay high, but yet it's decreasing, specifically for the Model Y. Although it's still a little bit early to celebrate because the ship just left China, so once it arrives and unloads in Canada, we will revisit the inventory charts then, but it looks promising so far. And we are now seeing entire fleets of police departments being replaced with Teslas. That's good. Tesla dropped this video showing how affordable Teslas are in China. Here's the video. They compare the Model 3 with Audis and BMWs and Mercedes, and it shows a few more features of Teslas. Yeah, pretty good. In the video, they explained that the total cost of owning a Model 3 is almost comparable to the Toyota Corolla. Nikola is not doing great. Nikola is about to pause truck production after posting bigger quarterly losses. Tesla is also under some political pressure from the Democratic leadership that claims it is hiding complaints. But it doesn't really seem serious at all. I think it's all fine. There's a link down below to support this channel on Patreon. Thank you to all of you who choose to do that. And this video explains why Tesla board members are now buying more Tesla stock. My name is Matt Posis. Like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.